Well, the Jerusalem capital is finally official. It is in Jerusalem. Long overdue. No president in recent memory has had the backbone to do it. And I guess some of them, if you look at the chaos that's ensued, even though it was all set up by Hamas, it was all theater. Their goal was to make sure they had human bodies and people died. That's the narrative they feel the American press love, and it worked. And finally, the New York Times and other media institutions are fighting back against this propaganda. Joining us via Skype is Evan Nierman, who's an expert on these issues in the Middle East. Evan, put in perspective the historical significance of it, the tragedy with the violence and 60 people dying, 2,700 injured. But what does it mean to the world? And already other states are already talking about moving their embassy to Jerusalem.
Sure. Well, Armstrong, it's always a pleasure to be here with you on this program, so thank you for having me. Look, you can't understate the significance of this development. For over 3,000 years, the Jewish people have had an uninterrupted physical presence in their historic homeland of Israel and in their capital city of Jerusalem. So what the president has done by moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is he has sent a message to the entire world that the United States, Israel's best friend, its closest ally, recognizes a fact, and that is Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and that's where the embassies of other foreign governments should also reside. So it's a historic thing that has happened. It's been, frankly, a long time coming. Congress voted in 1995 with the Jerusalem Embassy Relocation Act. When the Congress passed that legislation, they put the world on notice then that the American people support the right of Israel to have their capital recognized. And 3 presidents, before we got to President Trump, promised as candidates that they would move the U.S. Embassy. They didn't. And they cited a national security waiver, which every 6 months gave them an opportunity to kick the can down the road. In this case, I think the Trump administration deserves a lot of credit for President living up to what he pledged on the campaign trail and finally just making it happen. So I think for Americans who are supporters of Israel, it's a joyous occasion. And for the Israelis themselves, it's something that they're very excited about. After all, their parliament, the Knesset, is in Jerusalem. The prime minister lives in Jerusalem. All of the institutions of government are in Jerusalem. So it makes sense that the U.S. Embassy, too, would be in Jerusalem.
What about the fact that the Israelis have a lot of support from other Arab states that surround them, like Saudi Arabia, like Egypt and others? Egypt intervened with Hamas and Hezbollah, asking them to back down and ratchet down their violence, and it's almost disappeared. Talk about those special relationships where they realize that Israel not only has a significant role, but the many threats that Israel face, they also face as Arab states.
Sure. Well, look, Israel, it bears remembering that Israel has peace agreements with 2 of its neighbors, with Egypt and with Jordan. And the security cooperation that exists between Israel and these neighbors cannot be understated. A lot of times for PR purposes, the governments there have to downplay it. They don't talk about it openly, but very high-level contacts on the security and at the political level are happening between Israel and Jordan and Israel and Egypt. The Palestinians, they physically are between Israel and Jordan, and Israel, the ones who live in the West Bank, and they're living between Israel and the Egyptians. Egypt does not want a terrorist state on its border, which is essentially what it has in Gaza right now, with the Hamas government in control. And what people forget about Hamas is this is an organization which has never been shy about its motives. Its motives are to destroy Israel, to drive the Jews into the sea. They're not looking for a peace agreement with Israel. They don't want pieces of Israel. They want the whole darn thing. And I think at the top of the segment, you raised a really good point, which is what happened with the orchestrated violence on the fence between Gaza and Israel. Sadly, it's exactly what Hamas wanted. What they wanted was, under the pretext of the population rising up and saying that they're upset about the embassy, hogwash. The protests had been going on long in advance, and what you had the leadership of Hamas exhorting the people to go to the fence, telling them, grab a knife, grab a gun, We got to go confront these Jews. We're going to burst down, we're going to tear down the border, and we're going to rampage. Call to arms. And they sent women, and they sent children, and they sent civilians out to make mayhem along the border. Now, at the same time, Hamas also instructed its own terrorist army not to approach the fence. They did not want their people, their terrorists, they would call them fighters, they didn't want them risking their lives because they knew that the Israelis were never going to allow their border to be breached. No, they told them, you're going to hang back, you're going to watch, and if these people are able to tear down and cut down and create an opening, when the people start streaming across the border and we rush into nearby Israeli communities, then you should go through the openings in the fence, you should mix in and blend in within the people, and then you can carry out attacks within Israel. So what you're seeing is just a completely cynical measure where they're using innocent civilians as human shields. They're embedding their fighters, not even among them now. They were going to embed them if they were able to break through. But because Israel would not allow that to happen, the Hamas armed folks and the leaders were not approaching the fence. And yet, what's also very interesting and very telling is the news media rushed to crucify Israel, as it always does, saying they're shooting innocent people. These are people who are just trying to make a better life for themselves. And yet Hamas in recent days has admitted that 80% of the people who ended up being shot and killed along the border were Hamas's people, identified with that radical Islamist terror group.
Evan Nierman, it's always a pleasure having you on. We look forward to future conversations. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Armstrong. Great to be here with you.